Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's vOLTHA TST call. Thanks for joining us. And as usual, the call is recorded and shared and will be public on YouTube. So please do be mindful of the comments you make and the things you share during the call. So today, among the many topics we have, I would like to start with a continuation of the core to adapter transaction error handling from Ken, but I would really like to get to at least the discussion on this patch should be an easy one, and at least an overview of DACX if possible from Girish and the team at Infosys. So let's just bear this in mind and be mindful of the time. That said, Ken, would you like to take it over from myself and share the screen as you did last time?
Yeah, sure. No problem.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Perfect. So last time we started this discussion, I updated part of the document. I also provide a link to some prototype changes that at this time is just as a reference to this document. So please feel free to provide your comments on those on grid changes for protos as well in this document. I'm not going to go with all the changes that I did in that document from last time. For example, there's a change at the bottom where I put some of the historical data that we can store per device on the KV store for whenever we update the device. So I'll let folks to go over that, get a chance to review it and provide their comments. Because if we just keep going over those comments, we'll never end with this document. So let me resume from where we were last time. Last time we were talking about packet out. And we're saying that we are not going to do much on the packet out error. But Andrea, I saw that you put a comment there, like to still return an error to OF agent, even if it's not going to be used by owners. One thing about that is usually when the packet out is being sent from the owners to OF agent to the core will send that packet out onto Kafka, push out on Kafka, and reply back that, yeah, I was able to send it. So there's a response back to the OF agent and eventually to owners. If there's a failure to that, if the failure exists in the core, there would be an error returned back to OF agent. But if there's a failure in the adapter, that message doesn't go through because there's already a first message that was sent to OF agent. If we want to send a subsequent message, then we need to track the transaction ID. That is the open flow transaction ID. Currently, this is not sent from the OF agent to the core. So we will need that in order to send back that response. Does that make sense?
It does, and then if it is like this, that an error onto Kafka already issues an error to OF agent, but the other one does not, maybe we can keep it as is.
Okay. Any other comments on that from anyone? Okay, let's go to the next one. Add flows. Currently, the way we handle an error for add flows is, again, if the error is in the core, for example, if we want to update the KV store and that fails, there's an error that's sent back right away. When we are able to send that, save that data and send it to an adapter, pretty much send to an adapter means push on the Kafka bus, we send back a success to wherever that call was invoked, whether it was vOLTHA CTL or OF agent. Now, and then the call, what does the call do? The call is going to wait for a response from the adapters. So if the adapters come back with an error, the call will remove the flows, the logical flows and the physical flows, if you want, from both the vOLTHA adapter and ONU adapters, relevant to that flow that it was trying to add. So that functionality exists today. What doesn't exist is sending a feedback to OF agent, a subsequent feedback to OF agent to say that there was a failure. And again, in order to do that, we will need the transaction ID in being sent from OF agent to the core. Any comment on add flows, and if there's anything else that we need to do? Like obviously we'll publish that message to Kafka like any other errors, but other than that, is there anything that we need to do in the code?
Yeah, I'm wondering if we do, a lot of times the flow might not be added, could be because of a resource capability, which might occur down on the agent or the hardware device itself. Is there a feedback path maybe in the future to specify a failure after the add was okayed initially?
The only way to do that is by using that transaction ID from OF agent, because that's an open flow transaction ID that sent it to OF agent, and then OF agent doesn't send that to the core, because before we didn't think that it's needed. But if we want to have that, then we'll need to be able to get that transaction ID and then send back an event back using that transaction ID.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that would be a helpful feature, maybe, post 2.5 or 2.6. Because as we get into more complex flows and greater scalability and all those issues.
So there is one thing to this. We might not need the transaction ID all the way, because what you could do, at least not the open flow transaction ID, what you could do is you could just not like bring back to pending state or remove the flows that failed, and the next flow stats that go to ONOS actually don't have those flows if you remove them. And ONOS will move them from added to pending add because they're not on the device.
Yeah, this is what we do today, where those flows get removed
Exactly.
on error. But do we want that additional feedback, the one that Chip was mentioning?
So with that additional feedback, you would actually get an OF error message, right? Coming from
that's correct.
Words on us.
Yeah.
ONOS doesn't really do anything at the moment with error messages with the flows.
Well, the error message is only useful if you put in the right error codes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And those error codes may or may not translate to what usually is the problem, which is some resource problem. I would say let's live with it, what we have right now. And if there is a need, we can change it later.
Yeah, that sounds good. I was just curious if that could be a roadmap if it's needed in the future, since it is a point of failure that's hard to predict.
Okay. If we're all okay with that, then I'll just leave it as is. The next one, update flows. I didn't really see any APIs to update flows, so I'm going to skip on that one. Unless somebody have seen an update flows from ONOS being sent to vOLTHA. If not, I'm going to talk about delete flows. Currently, when we delete a flow, if we send that delete flow to the adapters and then we get a response back, a failure response back, we don't do anything to it, to that flow. So that flow will remain deleted in the core, but maybe will still be presented on the adapter side of things. So what is the course of action that should we take there? It's a little bit tricky. Should we re-add those flows in the core?
Don't you propagate the error back to ONOS and ONOS stays in pending deleted state?
No, that message doesn't get propagated back because it's, again, we will need that transaction ID if we want to send an OF error message back.
Normally deletes should always succeed. I don't see why it would fail. I mean, if it fails, then probably something is horribly wrong there. I don't think we should try to add it again. Probably that would fail too. So just propagate back to ONOS and ONOS show the right status, and probably the operator can take action, or the user of the system can take necessary action. That could be to delete the subscriber itself and re-add again.
So if we propagate back, then we'll need to add that OF error message in order to do that. Any other comments on how we can handle delete flows? Are we all in agreement to send back an OF error message?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, then if you're sending it back on delete, I'm wondering if it should just do that on add as well.
Yeah, if once we add it, then it's it will be available for all possibilities.
It doesn't hurt to be correct.
Yeah.
I think it's worth doing it for both add and delete then.
Okay. The only difference in the case of add, we will also delete the flows in the core, but in the case of delete, we'll leave the flows deleted.
That sounds right, yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. So the next two is enable port and disable port. We don't do much. I'm thinking like we're going to do the same thing that we did for enable or disable a device. We are going to publish it to Kafka and leave it as is. Because that's what we decided for device, I believe. To enable device and disable device, we say we're going to publish it to Kafka and we are not going to revert the change and we don't have a retry mechanism. Does it make sense to do the same with enable and disable port?
I'm fine with that.
Yes,
What is the status reflected to ONOS in this case?
The status to ONOS will remain as if, like, for example, we're saying enable the port. If the port was somehow in a disabled state, the status will be in that previous state. There won't be any state change,
Right?
Because we rely on the update from the adapters to change the port state.
Right. Okay. So the status doesn't change if there's a problem. Okay. Great. Thanks.
So we're okay to leave it as is? No more action?
I'm fine with that.
Seems good to me.
Okay, cool. So that's pretty much what I had in terms of transactions. I add some comments from last time where some ideas of what we can do in order to track updates to the device. I'll let you guys like review it and then provide comments on this document. And also there is this proto changes that I put in. So you can provide comments on that one so that we can proceed to the next topic. So if there's no other comments, then Andre, I guess you can take over.
Will do. You guys have anything else for Ken while we are on this? No? Okay. Then let me get back the presentation rights. See the agenda, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So next up, there is a discussion on a patch that was brought up on the patch itself. And I honestly don't know what exactly we want to do with this. There was a discussion between Girish, Serkant, and Girish from ONF. Does anybody want to give an update on this? What's the current status? Maybe Girish or Serkant?
I don't have any update, but I can give a brief description of what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
So with the implementation of multiple vOLTHA stacks, we implemented reading an environment variable of where to read the from which path to read the etcd data. So each of the vOLTHA core components, OpenVOLT adapter and RV core, reads the environment variable and try to read all of the data from the etcd by using that location from the environment variable. But the problem is, there is no problem with that, of course, but the problem is the technology profile data. So currently in our test systems, we manually insert the technology data into the etcd, and right now we are pushing it to a default location. But each of the vOLTHA stacks has different etcd paths. Probably the vOLTHA stacks, different vOLTHA stacks will not be able to reach those technology profile data, and they will continue using the default technology profile data. So the question is, does a NEM implementation have to know each of the vOLTHA stack etcd location, or the vOLTHA stacks reads the technology profile data from a single location, from a default location? The question is
So according to me, the NEM should be aware of this, because it is aware of technology profile is nothing but a service. So I would be surprised if NEM doesn't know what services it is configuring, where is the service configuration. That is highly unlikely. I mean, probably impossible. So NEM should be aware of this location, and I don't see why different vOLTHA stacks would use different default locations. I mean, all these vOLTHA stacks are deployed by a single operator, and why would each vOLTHA stack use different service profiles or different locations to store the technology profiles? I mean, I don't see a reason why that should happen.
They have a different share of etcd. Each stack has a different share of etcd. Is that the reason why basically, I don't know, I don't even know if I'm making sense, but is that the reason why they all have different default locations?
Different share?
Well, is etcd partitioned in any way for a stack in terms of namespace or something, right?
Okay.
Where you end up going and looking for your technology profile.
That
Is
I
that
do not
the
know.
deal?
Okay. Okay. Probably Sarkant can answer that. I don't know.
Sorry, Saurabh, couldn't follow you well.
I'm saying, why does the problem arise in the first place, right? Why does each VOLTHA stack look in a different place for their technology profile? What is the path, and why is the path different for each stack?
So you know, each VOLTHA stack has data in etcd, like resource data, flow data. So the data in etcd should be isolated for each of the VOLTHA stacks. So
there is a VOLTHA OLT device ID that actually provides a unique path to store all the resource pool and any flow data or anything related to that particular OLT. So that already provides some uniqueness. Are you talking about just storing the technology profile, say technology profile ID 64, which probably identifies, say, 1T-conf4 gem? I mean, where you store this profile itself is unique for all the stacks. I mean, that should not change really.
I am not sure of that because some of the data doesn't use any device-specific path. So we needed to separate each of VOLTHA stacks etcd path.
So the reason to separate, to quote-unquote partition etcd for the VOLTHA stack was mostly for the list operation, because when we list the device, we list everything that is under that particular prefix. And if that prefix is shared across multiple VOLTHA stack, they will list all the devices that are present in etcd.
Yes, that's an example, yeah.
Yes, but normally the adapter would, just read the technology profile once, but then onwards all the data is read and written on the OLT ID prefix. So,
but what about the technology profile instances that are created? Right?
Yeah, I mean, no problem with that. The only problem where to get the technology profile data, the first, the raw data.
Oh, okay. So that's why I was asking about the path, right? Isn't the path under the, on the same sort of tree branch, right? You have a technology profile, and then under that you have the technology profile instances that get created from that technology profile. Isn't it on the same?
So currently, I don't know how we are doing in the VOLTHA system tests, but probably there is a command that manually inserts the technology profile data into the etcd. So it doesn't, probably it uses a path which doesn't care the environment variable in the VOLTHA stack. So there is no relations with them. So if a VOLTHA stack uses a etcd path, NAM also should be aware of that path. But that is the only data is the technology profile data, and that is the same for all of the VOLTHA. That would be the same for all the VOLTHA stacks.
So if I understand correctly, the reason that you want to separate out is probably for performance. I mean, if the same tree path prefix is used, you see that there are some performance issues. So you want to separate them out. Is that the reason?
No.
No, it's not performance, but think when, for example, the core restart, the core will go read all of his devices in etcd. If all the devices for all the VOLTHA stacks are within the same branch, the core doesn't know which devices he owns and which devices are owned by other stacks. So we need to keep information separated for stack, except maybe the technology profile, because that's something that we only read to create the instances.
Okay. But the read-write code doesn't, refer to any of the technology profile related data. Are you referring to the adapter?
The initial technology profile data is inserted manually. There is no core, there is nothing to do with the core. We are pushing that data probably using a command in, I think, and we're trying to find that.
Yeah, I think the question boils down, is it okay to share the technology profile template across multiple stack? And as Girish was saying, I don't see any reason why a stack would use a different template, considering that all the stacks are owned by the same operator, and thus they will most likely have the same set of services.
Yes, I agree with that. All the technology profile data would be the same for all of the VOLTHA stacks. But the question is, should we put those data, should we put the technology data into a single place, or should we put the data in all of the etcd paths?
Well, if we think that they are always going to use the same template, then it makes sense to have it in a single place.
As long as you can keep the instances separate.
Yes.
The
There's no
instances
problem
are
with
separate.
that.
Okay. Then I see no problem.
Yeah. The instances anyway have another unique OLT ID in their path, so they're all different.
Yes, correct. So that depends on the NAM implementation, actually. So your NEM may know all of the etcd paths and inserts the data to the correct paths, or you can just configure your NEM for a single etcd location, and NEM doesn't care how many VOLTHA stacks there, and just inserts the technology profile data to a single place.
I don't see any value to, duplicate the data in different places. If you have a technology profile definition, then it should be in a place and all of the stacks should read from the same place. Because we will probably, make changes from these technology profiles, delete them, manage them. So in the northbound system, so we cannot go to different places to change this, and data duplication is also a problem, I think.
Yeah, sounds good.
But the implementation in the VOLTHA libgo might be tricky because at the initial startup, there may be no data about, there may be no data of technology profile in the etcd. So
if there is no technology profile created, I think the northbound systems shouldn't do any subscription. So what's the problem?
Yes. So it doesn't matter when VOLTHA starts up, there is no technology profile. So all that matters is when you provision the subscriber, there should be a profile. So it can come much later to no problem, but it should be there before you provision the first subscriber.
Yes.
Yes. And when you try to read the technology profile data, then the vOLTHA adapter or RV core, probably RV core, should be able to check the default paths for the technology profile or the on path, the configured path.
That logic should be there already in vOLTHA libco.
That logic doesn't care if there's a data in the STD. It only checks the path is configured in the environment variable or not.
But,
It should.
but I think it did not check, right? So it yes, it is only looking at the environment variable. It is there or not. So it is setting the initial path, which it would be using as a prefix for doing the technology profile lookup data, right? So I don't see any reason why it needs to do any lookup, right, at the initial, right, when the this technology profile manager is coming up, right, which would probably come up along with the initial startup of the adapter.
So when there are multiple vOLTHA stacks, the environment variable would be always set because each needs a different unique path. So when this code piece run, then the code will always use the environment variable. But the NEM inserts the technology profile data into a default path, then technology profile couldn't be taken.
Yes, so we need to probably decide, right, whether we are going to, whether NEM is going to push it into default path, which means we are kind of going to have a default path as a place to keep the reference data, right? It's data which is not going to be changed by the vOLTHA stack, right?
Yes, correct.
I think the doubt here is the possibility of NEM having a different path and vOLTHA stack coming up with a different, trying to look up on a different path. In my opinion, that should never happen. I mean, NEM and vOLTHA stack should refer to the same path always. I mean, you're calling for trouble if both are, trying to work on different paths.
Yes, I agree with that.
If you have deployed a vOLTHA stack via Helm charts with some path, I mean, NEM should refer to the same path.
And you say that NEM should know all of the SCD paths for all of the vOLTHA stacks and should replicate all of the same technology profile data.
Yes, of course, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the question. Just we need to decide which way to go.
Hi, this is Amit. So as long as we keep the technology profile path as a startup configuration, right? So then the flexibility would be there to choose whether to use one path or they could be different paths. So, and the NEM could do it accordingly, right? So as Girish said, we don't foresee a reason why the different vOLTHA stacks would need to use different data for the technology profiles. But if at all some use case comes up in the future and someone wants to do that, they could still do it. So as long as we keep it as a startup configuration, then the flexibility would be there, right?
No, they will not use different technology profile data. All of the vOLTHA stacks will use the same technology profile data. That is why for all of the stacks, we could set a common location for the technology profile data.
Which means, I think then we need not even look at this environment variable, right? Then probably
maybe,
use...
yes, yeah, maybe, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We can just define any variable for that to get where to read the technology profile data.
Or maybe use the base path, right? /survey / vOLTHA technology profile site.
Yeah, it's already there. The base path is there. I mean, you just append the technology profile ID and then place the technology profile there. So
okay,
there is a base path and you append the technology profile ID and then place the technology profile there.
Sounds like we have an agreement, which is good. Girish, would you mind, which is good. Girish, do you mind implementing this in the patch and coming up with a follow-up review?
Yeah, I will talk to Neha. We'll push in an updated patch. But let me see if even if it is required. Let me see, I think.
Okay.
I'm
yeah,
feeling it.
sure.
Okay. Yeah.
If it's not required, just send out an email to everybody and abandon the patch, and that would be enough.
Yeah, sure.
Is there any other data like that is common to all of the stacks? Or technology profile is the only one?
I don't know any other.
Yeah, nor do I.
Nope. Need. Okay. Any other point or comment on this?
It is also wrong to insert directly to the etcd by the NEM, but that is another topic, I guess.
Well, we do that. Unfortunately, we do that for a few things. I also don't like it, I have to say.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a topic worth discussing in the future, and not really. It's a bigger topic than this one. Okay, now let's go to the next topic. I would like to have Girish Kumar and team from Infosys present their proof of concept for TACAX and its involvement with password access to different components of the vOLTHA stack. So Girish, please take the presentation and go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So, hi everyone. So, I will probably just take 10 minutes of your time to probably present a proof of concept implementation that we are trying to do based on DTA requirements. And I think most of it probably should be good enough to probably take up by into the community implementation as well. Just a minute. Let me share my screen. Okay. Hope you can see right my screen has opened that same document. Wait. You're able to see me screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So this small document which we have created around implementing a basic TechX client as server implementation in vOLTHA, and I think we can position this TechX client into any particular in any layer, but in alignment with the data requirement with we are working, right? So we are placing this client into the old device. Okay, so the boxes in green, right, which you can see, they are kind of going to be affected by this change. So we're trying to put in a TechX client into a new component called TechX auth proxy, okay, which is going to internally get the user authenticated against a TechX server. Okay, and if the if the call is authenticated and authorized, it will just forward that request to OpenVoLTHA agent. So at Infosys, we are building this TechX auth proxy as a separate binary, which will install as a separate Debian package. But the whole idea is to kind of integrate it into OpenVoLTE agent also. Okay, so as of now, we are kind of building it as separate binary, but finally, if it all works fine and DT wants to take it forward, it should be integrated with OpenVoLTE agent code. Okay, so at a high level, there are actually 5 things we are doing. As you already know, the TechX, I think, is a standard model, right, for access, for ensuring the access of the network devices. And there are 5 points we are taking up. So first one is basically we are integrating a TechX client into a new auth proxy service, which is running on a VoLTE device, which will do the authentication, authorization, accounting for operations. Okay, and this proxy component would intercept the gRPC call for OpenVoLTE adapter and then forward it to agent after authentication. Okay, then we are looking at extending the gRPC client in OpenVoLTE adapter to include user credentials in each API call, which is made to the OpenVoLTE agent. So in the metadata, we are going to introduce user credentials in the username and password in the each of the gRPC call. The kind vOLTHA is also getting extended for support a dynamic injection of user credentials. So there's already a patch pushed in for kind vOLTHA and Helm chart where we are kind of using Kubernetes secrets for configuring the username and password, which are getting injected into OpenVoLTE adapter, and adapter is using those credentials for including in the gRPC calls. Then we also have created a Docker image for simulating a TechX server. So we're taking an open source implementation of TechX server, which is getting created, used for creating the Docker image. And that Docker image is kind of getting deployed as part of the kind vOLTHA if you start the kind vOLTHA with a option with underscore TechX. Okay, so just like I think we have with underscore logging or with underscore BBSIM right now. Same way, I think if you start with the underscore TechX, that TechX server is getting deployed. Okay. So, so this small document around it, where it's defining kind of a configuration which you are putting into it. This is explaining the user authentication flow, that the same thing I was talking about, that we are sending authorization header in the gRPC metadata, carrying the username and password encoded in basic64 format, just like HTTP basic authentication. And then beginning on, we are just kind of detailing out how we are going about it. For example, we're using a normal password authentication protocol based model when sending the request to TechX server. And so that is authentication. If the authentication goes through, the next status done is the user authorization. For supporting that, in the TechX server, we are going to have a set of entities defined, ACL, to control which machines are allowed. So OpenVoLTE address would come into here. So VoLTE device address would come into here. That device is allowed to use the TechX server. Group is defining a user group for role-based access, right? And then there are users which are going to be configured. And then you would also be able to configure the command. So for individual commands, where the command is going to be corresponding to the API name, the lowercase API name, which is allowed by which user.
I mean, is there a need to restrict OpenVoLTE adapters access? I mean, it is the only user, so to speak, right? So
yes.
Why is there a, yeah, I mean, why have different API calls for different user groups or whatever, right?
So I think you're right. I think it's not required, but as a POC, we're just trying to validate that aspect. It works fine. And other part was at one point of time, as I understand from manual, the user information as of now we are going to inject, right, as a secrets into OpenVoLTHA adapter. But he had the vision that this user information may, right, flow down from the NAM at some point of time through vOLTHA API. When that happens, I think this probably may make sense. Although I think I also had some discussion with Manuel on this, that probably we should have TechX authentication at the vOLTHA API layer. That's also a place we can have that. But I think we wanted to test to try to do it on the actual vOLTHA device. While accessing the actual vOLTHA device, they wanted to put it in. And and that has been more complex to implement, so probably we took up that as a POC. But you're right, it's slightly debatable, but I'll do it.
Yeah, I think probably the Volt Kettle is where Volt Kettle, the APIs that Volt Kettle uses to interact with vOLTHA is perhaps where you needed it the most. I would think, the other set of APIs ONOS uses. Okay, so that one, I don't think it's useful. And then the one you're working on, which is OpenVoLTHA agent to adapter. That one also, I mean, okay, but what do others think?
But you're right, I think that was also my initial proposal, if you look at the original version of this document, to do it at vOLTHA API, but yeah.
I am wondering why the SSL TLS-based authentication scheme is not enough for the security between the OpenVoLTHA adapter and the agent, because there will be no access list, there will be no different authorizations. There's only a single adapter trying to use the agent, and I think it would be enough to have SSL TLS-based authentication, and gRPC supports that. What is the, I'm wondering what is the requirement here to have the TACACS? To access the device via SSH, then it makes sense to have a TACACS server integration, but I don't get why do we need the on this interface?
No, I think the idea is that TechX is, so OpenVoLTHA as an API is supporting roughly 15 to 16, right, API calls. Some of them you want to restrict access to that, right, which are kind of not related to, let's say, subscriber flow management. If somebody is trying to reboot the device, right, that should not be allowed.
I see.
So that was the idea.
No, but how do you reboot the device? I mean, via API call from outside the OLT, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then if the only method of connecting to the agent is via secure gRPC, then you need the right certificates. So wouldn't that already be solved if you have, I mean, that's what Sarkant was saying, I think. If the only way to, to connect to the agent is via secure gRPC, I don't think unauthorized users can connect to the OLT. So probably, as Saurabh was saying, the right place to put this is at vOLTHA. I mean, it would make more sense to put it there.
Yeah, maybe. I also agree with that. We don't have different kinds of software components that make different, core different APIs on OpenVoLTHA agent. We don't have another type of OpenVoLTHA adapter that cannot reboot but add the flows.
Okay. Maybe I think the next step. So I think this is something which we are already almost at the completion stage. So we'll probably take it to closer, but you're right. I think we at the next step, but we can probably introduce because all these are patches, right, as a POC, so it is not going to be completely, I think, we are going to create patches, test it, demonstrate it, and then keep it there if you want to probably get it merged. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, from the feedback that you have heard, I mean, doing this for a POC is fine. But the feedback is similar to your initial sentiment, Girish, that
yes,
maybe this is not the right interface to do it on. So as a POC,
right.
I think it's okay, but it's unlikely to get merged into a release, I would think.
Yeah, definitely. I think I do agree with you, so ideally this kind of a proxy or authentication should happen at just above the RW core, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So just want to probably just share this, that I think this is some work being done, and I think a lot of this would be usable, right, going forward once we complete it. For example, this basic TechX authentication part, right, the TechX server integration with kind vOLTHA, some of kind OpenVOLTHA adapter related changes if you want to try out, those could be some of these things can be integrated later if you want to introduce TechX at the RW core level. So we'll push in those patches. So anyway, I think feel free to, if you want to probably have a look at this further document which talks about accounting records as well, and what are the kind of libraries which you are using, and some of the implementation notes. So we plan to complete this by the end of this week, because our OpenVOLTHA adapter and TechX server related changes are in. Finally, we are creating a deb package for installation on OLT and should be able to take it to closer this week. But all this would be pushed as patches with comment as do not merge. You can probably have a look at it, and this for, I think, consumption by DT as of now. But yeah, if you want to take some parts of it, we can.
Thanks, Girish. Yeah, I think some parts of it could be useful as a reference for future.
Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thanks, Girish. Absolutely, and I totally agree with the feedback that was given. But the deployment of the TechX server, the Helm charts for that, and the kind vOLTHA changes to deploy it are definitely worth having. And then after those, maybe we could merge those, but not the OpenVOLT stuff, and look at possibly doing it on top of the RW core as a next step. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that concludes that topic. I don't think we have enough time for the investigation of the secrets of 4G RPC, so I'll bring it forward to the next next week. Just bear in mind, please, that today is Tuesday the 8th, and in 2 days from now, so end of business day on Thursday the 10th, we are going to do a code freeze, meaning that we're not going to accept any more patches in master. And this is effectively to give the ONF testing team and the whole ONF team and everybody involved in the community project enough time to fix bugs and things on 2.5. So please do merger patches or do solicit reviews if a review is needed for anything that you want to get into 2.5. Just ask on the VOLTHA channel or ping directly people that you know might need to take a look at your patch, and make sure that it gets into 2.5 if you care about that. Having said that, or is there anything else that people want to talk about? Then if not, thanks everybody for joining, and I'll talk to you on Slack and on the mailing list. I'll publish the recording as usual. Thanks everybody. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks. Bye.
All right.